Hello and welcome to Layer Mask 101. What I'm going to do in this video is simply show you what a layer mask is and how you control it. Photographers use layer masks to control tonal value and color detail. Designers use layer masks to make seamless composite images. The layer mask basically allows us to paint on a layer and reveal the information that's underneath it. In this case, I have three exposures. I have a medium exposure, I have an underexposure, and I have an overexposure. A quick disclaimer here, these over and underexposed shots or layers were made using blending modes in Photoshop. You really wouldn't want to do that in real life, only if you weren't thinking about doing it at the time of capture. Why? Because in the window over here, this detail is gone in these highlights. Photoshop cannot bring back detail that was never there. If we were making an exposure that was 2 f-stops underexposed, or 3 f-stops underexposed, the detail from that window would come in and we would have it at our disposal. This is why HDR photographs or high dynamic range images work. But we're not creating really a high dynamic range image per se. On one level we are, okay, because we're increasing the dynamic range of our initial exposure. Okay, so let's go right to layer masks. I'm going to go down here on the layers panel. The white circle with the gray background is the layer mask icon. I click on that and the layer mask comes up. We want to be sure that the layer mask is activated. You'll see these black squares or frames around it. This lets us know that we are going to be painting on the layer mask. We do not want to be painting on the image when we do this, or we'll be painting black and white on the image. We can erase it, but it's kind of a hassle. Okay, next thing we're going to do is we're going to let me just show you how this works very quickly. I have black selected as my foreground color, and I have 100% opacity, and I'm just going to simply paint a swash across the image, and as you can see, the image is getting darker as I do this. It's showing us the information that's in the layer underneath, and here we see that layer information over here on the mask itself. Okay, let me undo that. Now what we're going to do is we're not going to use a hard edge, we're going to use a softer edge. And the way we do that, if you look over here, I'm holding down the shift key and I'm going to use the left bracket key, and that's going to make my edge softer. If I just use the bracket tools by themselves, thereby the P key, I can make the brush bigger or I can make the brush smaller. Okay, and I can do that on the fly without having to use the mouse to go up here to do that. So I'm going to make my brush a little bit bigger. Yeah, that's about right. Make it a little bit smaller actually. And then now what I'm going to do is I'm going to change the opacity from 100 to something less. I usually start at 50%. Because I want to be able to build the effect up. If you want a more subtle effect, use a lower number. If you want a more dynamic effect, then use a higher number. I'm going to start at 50, and I'm also going to try not to go into the frame. In this case it doesn't make that much difference, but I'm going to go ahead and paint in there, and as you can see, the window detail is getting darker. It's getting, I'll say, richer, okay, because we're going in here and we're painting that detail in. I'm going to go a little bit closer. I'm hitting the control key and the plus key on a PC. On a Mac that would be the command key. I'm going to hold down the space bar, turn in the bracket to the grab tool, come over here, and I'm going to start to paint inside of this frame. Now you want to be a little careful with this, because if I just go in here kind of sloppily, I'm going to make that frame darker. I don't want to necessarily do that. Why? Because in natural lighting situation, this is bright because light's coming across that. So I'm just going to go ahead and do the window first. Okay. And now, if and when you ever make a mistake, you just simply change from black to white. I'm going to make this a little bit smaller, show you a little trick here. I'm going to click here once, and then I'm going to hold down the shift key, go to the top, and click again. And I have constrained the brush to go in a straight line. I'm going to do the same thing over here. Because once again, in natural situation, that's being lit, right? Okay. So my window is done. And let's see what that looks like. I'm going to go ahead and disable that so you can see. And bring it back. That shows you the mask. Okay. And now what we're going to do is, because this is a reaction between this top layer and the one beneath it, I want all of this to happen on one layer when I work on my highlight detail. So I'm going to make a new layer that shows this effect. This is layer via copy. Control Alt Shift on the Mac, that would be Command Option Shift, and the E key, the letter E. That creates a new layer that has the same effect. Okay, I'm going to turn this layer off, and I'm going to turn this layer off because I don't need them, because I want to show that detail on this layer. Once again, I'm going to come down here to my layer mask. I'm going to click. I'm going to come back in here and I'm going to click again, and I'm going to change from white to black. I could also hit the X key to exchange them. Now I'm going to make my brush bigger again, and I'm going to put a little bit of light on that flag. I'm going to lower my opacity down just a little bit. I want that effect to be, I want to build that up. And now I'm going to make the brush smaller and just work on the flag itself. Okay. And now what I'm also going to do, I'm going to make my brush bigger. Now we're just painting. Putting detail in. And I'm going to put a little detail into the face of my organ here. Make that brush a little bit bigger and just kind of go in there and paint that detail in. Don't want it to be too bright. I'm going to lower the opacity. I have this little scrubber here. You see how that turns into a double arrow? I can click and I can move the opacity up and down by going to the left or right. Okay, I'm just going to come over here and add just a little bit of light over here. A little bit more light down here on the floor. Okay, and I'm pretty much done with this. Okay, and once again I am going to do a copy via layer by holding down the Control, the Alt, and Shift key, the letter E, and now all of this is on one layer. And now I'm going to disable this layer mask just for demonstration purposes, so we can see our medium exposure. That's what we started with. This is what we ended with. Okay, just kind of moving the tonality around a little bit to create a richer image. And because this is kind of distracting me, I'm going to go to the crop tool, and I'm just going to do a quick crop right there at the edge. I could, yes, clone that out, but I'm just going to go ahead and do it this way instead. And voila, there is my finished photograph using the power of layer mask.